It's cold. I don't care where you are in the world. It's right now, it's probably 0 Celsius. And there's a nice stiff breeze. My brother's getting his machine ready. Let me turn I'm gonna keep this light on today. That's my front light there. Let's turn on the rear.
The main weakness in our setup on this ride were our gloves. The gloves we were wearing was the first time
Because I'm dressed as warm as I can. I even have a thermal gilet on.
These gloves are the first time we've taken them in this
my rear light going.
Cold of a temperature.
Let's get this computer rolling.
And they didn't hold up very well.
I left the bike outside so you all can see on the overlay that it's ready. But with this thermal base layer, I can pull this up over my face if I need to. I'm going to start with it on my chin, but it goes up in the front and the back. I'll pull this right about here. But it is one of the coldest rides we've done. It's not going to get much over 6 Celsius for the high of the day.
It never got near that.
It's going to continue to get colder throughout the weekend.
It never got near 6. It stayed at -1 Celsius. 27, 28 degrees, especially when we turn north. We're going mostly around 27.5 Fahrenheit, which is about -1, -2 Celsius. And these gloves with the wind just went right through them.
It's the pieces that make the difference.
And they're more for wet weather. They keep your hands dry than to block the wind. And so we recognize that, and we've got the necessary tweaks in place because we have the equipment. So our hands were the weak spot on this ride. And so next time we'll be better.
One thing about it being very cold, the roads are going to be really clear.
And that's
nobody wants to be out. 7:01 a.m. We're just rolling. We're doing our own thing because it's clear. The other boys are not going to be riding. They didn't even post a ride. The Team RR guys. Maybe WCC guys will be out there. We'll see. But we're doing our own thing, and we're going to get some clips for you all. It is very frigid. If you poured water out, it would freeze right now.
It's right at freezing as we leave, and once we turn right, we hit that wind.
So we just rolling out, we just feel a little cool, and that's how come we know we got it right.
So if the wind wasn't too stiff, our hands would have been
I've got about, let's see, I got 3 layers on, but they're really special layers. 3 thermal layers. The gilet and the jersey, they're all thermal. They look thin, but they're very, very technical. That's what makes the difference.
And you're never going to get it perfect, so you've got to get out in these conditions and test your equipment.
I got my shoes covered. I'm using the Asos to see how it fares in this real frigid weather. Paul's got his Rafa neoprene shoe covers on, not the deep winter ones. But the key is making sure the stuff you have is tight and sealed. If you see my gloves, they're over the jersey, so the wind has nowhere to go but over it.
On this ride, Paul and I left Northampton. It never warmed up. The forecasted high was supposed to be 6 Celsius. It barely got above -1 Celsius. We rode out past the woodlands. We went on our own. We took 1488 west, went up Mount Magnolia, area called Moswind. We took 149. This whole stretch, we're battling the wind. We got some clips there, and it was just cold. So once we got to Dobbins, we went ahead and did a turnaround, went through Tri-Lakes, and even though we had the wind somewhat behind us, it was still very cold. Once we got through Keenan, we cut through the Grand Lake Estates. When we got back to Honea Egypt Road, we saw the WCC boys, but we were stopped at the time to just check to make sure we were okay. And so we came back in on our own and got some clips on our favorite road, Honea Egypt Road.
All right, legends, it's cold. It's about -6, and it's getting colder.
It felt like
But,
-6 in the wind, but it's actually -2, the official temperature. But we're headed north into the wind. And everything is cold. Our hands are very cold because, as I mentioned earlier, the gloves that you see there, they're more set up for resisting water than wind. And so even though they're layered, they allowed a lot of the wind to get through, so it just really chilled our hands more than we had anticipated. We like keeping our hands nice and toasty. And it got to the point where on the way back, our hands were so cold, we couldn't really modulate the shifting very well. It was even a challenge to get on the big chain. So that was about the only weakness for this day based on the change in the temperature. We dressed for 6C, but -2 was a lot lower than we expected. It was supposed to warm up quicker according to the forecast, but the weather changed on us. So you can never get it perfectly right, but you learn from it. We're approaching 149 on the right. This is 149 north, and then it's going to turn right and continue, but we're going to go straight where it changes into Jackson Road. I'm zipping up my gilet because I had just unzipped it to get the camera out of my jersey that you see beneath there. I kept the camera under the gilet. The gilet is thermal. It has insulation built in. It's really nice and warm. So everything was perfect except for our hands because the wind picked up. So next time we have other gloves that block the wind more effectively than the one we were wearing. That's what you have to do. You have to get out there. You can't just do the theory. You get out there and put the pieces you have together and see what works. The wind here is stiff. We're going up, so of course it dulls our speed. And then being uncomfortable with your hands, that's all you think about. So other than the fact that the ride was a great ride, we focused so much on the piece of our kit that could not keep up with the change in the wind, to where we just thought about, oh man, if only, but still, it was a great ride. So we rode 3 hours into the wind and then we turned around. The only other people out here that we knew about, we came across the WCC people at Honea, Egypt, but at that time we had made a pit stop, so they were moving in their pace line. They just checked to make sure everything was okay, and then they continued. But it was good to know that they were out there. They had like 6 people in the group, so those are the other diehards, rule number 9 followers that were out here. This was not for the faint of heart. You can see my face was completely covered in the shots you saw earlier. And that's just the Rafa thermal base layer. You can pull it up. So I didn't need to wear a balaclava or a neck warmer. And the gilet did its job. You see how it's flapping? I could hear that, and periodically I would reach back and pull it down. And then it would quiet it at the shoulder there. But that lets you know what kind of wind we're dealing with. I dubbed the wind here for this post-production stuff. But we were going into a stiff northerly wind, and it was just frigid. And so we protected our skin by pulling the thermal base layer up over our face. And other than that, we were fine because your breath warms your face once it's over your face. And the way they're designed, they're like honeycomb. So it forms a nice little warm cocoon as you breathe. So when you're riding in this kind of weather, don't worry about your intensity. Focus more on being steady because you're burning calories just because it's cold anyway and you're out there. So don't worry too much about it. We just focused on riding. I think Paul comes to the front here. At this point, my hands are bothering me because these gloves just did not block the wind. They're not engineered
cold,
for that.
legends. It's 27 degrees Fahrenheit. It's about -4 Celsius.
So the head unit is registered at -2, but it felt like -4 because that wind is blowing. Since it was a cloudy day, we kept our front and rear lights on the entire ride. As you can see, the roads are empty. So like the rain, I really like riding when it's very cold because people don't want to get out. We're passed by a handful of cars in the time we're out here in the open area, basically, before we got back to town. Even in town, it was light.
The wind is pounding us as we go up this grade on Jackson Road. This road goes up the whole way, and we're going directly into the wind. So we're not trying to set any land speed records, just conditioning here.
Yeah, the wind was just stiffer than it was not forecasted to be that way. And that's why the temperatures never got near what the forecast said.
You hear that wind?
That's the Pro Team jacket from a few seasons ago that Paul is wearing, and he loved it. That's layer 4. He's got 4 layers. I've got 3 layers. So everybody needs different things. You have to find out, and then based on the kind of garments.
It has actually gotten colder as the ride progressed than when we first started.
The Belgian cap I'm wearing was perfect, and it could have gone even in colder temperatures. It would have been fine. So all I would have changed was I either would have worn my neoprene gloves or my Rafa deep winter gloves, or one of the other gloves that we're testing, like the Prologue with that wind cover on it. That probably would have been better than the gloves I'm wearing. So I'm looking forward to the next real cold weather ride if we get that opportunity. Because now we've got things really dialed in. So the milder rides will be a piece of cake for us. That's the way you have to look at it. But look at this road. The road is clear. There's no precipitation, so even though it's below freezing, the roads are fine. We took a bottle of electrolytes, but we really barely touched it. A ride like this, you can take hot cocoa. We've got bottles that will keep stuff cold or hot. If you have that, that's what you would do. Because we really don't like to do too much stopping. And that's probably would have been great on a ride like this, but we didn't need any because we drank before we left home. We did our usual pit stops, but other than that, we just kept moving. I'll check for traffic. He moved over. I move up, slip in the camera. And the reason why I say you got it, I make sure he says he has it before I let go of it. Because our field is somewhat compromised and I wanted to make sure. We ride together often enough, so as I go through, when I hand him the camera, I don't even get to his pace right away because I want to give him a chance to settle, get the camera placed, especially in this weather. What I'm doing up there is I'm pulling my my thermal base layer, I'm pulling it up over my face because behind him I didn't need it as much. So once I get to the front, I pull it back up. You see my gile, look at the top of my shoulder. That's the kind of wind that's coming. I use the mirror on the bar end. You can see where I'm positioned on the road. There's absolutely minimal vehicles on this road. So we basically used most of the lane, and all the drivers today gave us a wide berth. I guess they figure if we're nuts enough to be out there in this temperature range, they don't want to mess with us. Everybody behaved themselves today. You see that guy all the way out across the road? That's what we got the whole ride. They steered clear of us. They're like, these guys are nuts. We get the same thing when it's raining and we ride. But there were so few cars, especially out here, that it was just a no-brainer. I mean, you'd get a car now and then, or maybe one or two. It was nothing. People just stayed off the roads. It was too cold. The roads were safe, and that's our thing. You know, if we had ice like we had yesterday, let's see, today is Tuesday, I'm doing this narration. So the front that came through brought ice. We will not be riding if the roads are unsafe. There's no point to that. But this was just really beautiful weather, and I even posted a comment on the GroupMe board for Team RR. One of our local legends, Mo, had said, why have cold weather gear if you're not going to use it? And why invest in it? So if you don't have it, yeah, get on a trainer, stay at home, know your limitations. Or if you don't desire to go there. I love riding in this kind of weather. And so with the right gear, you're fine. Our feet were fine. The shorts I'm wearing are the Pro Team bib shorts 2 with tights. And they were perfect. I mean, and I felt like they could go deeper. So the biggest thing you have to pay attention to, your head, your hands, and your feet. You get those right, and then the rest of your torso and stuff, you can stay out there. So all we needed was to put that other, like the deep winter gloves or something else that had wind blocking going for it, like the Prologue. That would have been ideal. We're almost 3 hours into the ride here. When we get to the end of Jackson, then we go kind of northeasterly, and we head south. After going northeast, we turn and go through Trilix on the tail end of our loop. We keep the effort in zone 2. The body works differently when you're dealing with adverse conditions, so you have to pay attention to that. And since our hands were not perfectly as warm as we normally like them, we had to take that into account, because it just stays on your mind. You know, your hands are a little tingly and they feel kind of cold, and you're like, okay. And you will see later in the film, I'm trying to get on the big chain ring, and I'm more concerned about pushing the gear levers too hard, because I could not really modulate it very well, because my hands were just a little colder than I like them to be. But as soon as I got back, I went ahead and put on the actual gloves we would have worn, and my hands felt better immediately, so I knew what the missing piece was. So we'll do a members only video on how to dress for different ranges of temperatures, and so that should help those of you channel members. Had the wind not picked up, we would have been really comfortable, because that's what the forecast was based on. The weather really changed dramatically. When it stays under 7 degrees of where it was forecasted, you know that's a drastic change. It was supposed to be 6 or 7 C for a high. We barely got to 0 C. I think at the end of the ride we got close. So at this point, I realized that the hills are coming out there. Actually, I was looking forward to that, because it would change the tempo. And a lot of times on the climbs, you're not going as fast, so you're not dealing with so much wind, I guess. Sometimes you come to a climb, and as soon as you start to go up, the wind kind of dies away. In the distance to the left, that's where the climb is. Telling Paul the wind appears to have shifted from the east. It's kind of northeasterly now. That's why you see me on this side of the road, and he's a little to my left. right around here, the wind dies down a little bit. There's the climb in the distance. It curves to the left. And there's a lot of trees around there, so the wind is not as pronounced because it's not as open in that little section. And as you crest it, it opens up. Keeping the rhythm the same. The object of this ride is conditioning. When you're dealing with seriously cold temperatures, you have to pay attention to how you're feeling. And since we were not too thrilled with our glove setup on this ride, we went ahead and just focused on staying in zone 1 and 2. This is like the reason why I say conditioning. These are the kind of rides where you build your capillaries. You go slow to go fast later. Here the hill begins. And it's long. So you find a rhythm. So we're about maybe a quarter of the way through this climb. And then if you want, you can ramp it up here. So you start the climb slower than you think you might need to. And as you get into it, you see how you feel, and then you start ramping things up. You can see the watts are about 200 watts. So anywhere between 2 to 250. That will keep me right around the top of zone 2. It's gonna vary for each rider based on your threshold, your functional threshold power. This is how you enjoy the climbs. That's why sometimes it's really great to ride with your mate or by yourself. You can really enjoy your ride. And when I say your mate, I mean like the WCC guys. They have a core group where I think it's Mo, Fabian, and then a lot of times Jesus and Jerry. They ride together so often that they kind of just instinctively know what pace they want to do for the most part. So you're not always overreaching. And I'm sure they have their days when they push harder. So you can see I started out in zone 1 and now I'm right at sweet spot. Almost maybe 3/4 of the way of this climb. It's another reason I like this road. It has very long climbs. It feels almost like climbing a mountain pass. We don't have mountains out here, but this comes close to simulating how it feels when you climb in the mountains. They're not always super vertical. Those of you who climb them, you know what I mean. You go around a hairpin turn or a switchback, and then it settles. And it might kick up a little bit, but at some point they level off and then they do it again. So you've got to really pace yourself. This may appear flat, but it's not. This is what they call false flat here. It's a slight grade, 1.5 thereabouts. And in the distance, it's going to dip and kick up, then go left and go down into another climb. So that entire piece, you've got about 2.5, 3 miles of climbing right there. So when we come out here, that's what we run into. I mean, they're not vicious grades, but if you put it in the proper gear, you can replicate a 4% climb on something like this. And when the weather is extremely cold, you want to get a nice rhythm and keep your tempo going. That helps keep you warm. And don't forget to eat. A lot of times it's hard to reach for your food because you got heavy gloves on. And if you have to stop, you stop. If you have the proper kit, you can keep some of your food in the front if you have a front pocket or something that's easily accessible. But don't forget to eat. You need that because you burn more calories when it's cold. This entire time, I'm not super comfortable with my hands. The rest of my body's fine. My hands were just battling that wind because that's what we're dealing with here. And it was cutting through the gloves. I like my hands to be toasty. I don't like them even cool when it's cold. I like them warm. That's why when it's 7 Celsius or something like that, we still layer our gloves because I want my hands toasty. I want it to feel like it's 18C, and I don't have to think about them. That's why we cover our shoes all the time, pretty much. And you see some of the other riders on some of our other rides, they don't have covered shoes. Well, that's their choice. I'd much rather my feet be warmer than I want them to be than cold. I don't want to think about them. And a lot of the covers we use, they're breathable enough to where as the temperatures rise, it's not a sweat box. So I never have to worry about removing them, especially if it's below 18 Celsius. This is the climb I was talking about. I would take us up to the corner of Jackson Road in 1486. So I keep the rhythm going here. Just change the way my body's been working, using a large gear, low RPMs. You use more energy out of the saddle, so you have to be aware. Prepare yourself for how long you can tolerate it. I just have a rhythm that I'm maintaining a certain tempo. This is 1486. This is what Jackson hits 1486. We turn right.
Off drive. Yeah.
All right. So right now here we're on Honea Egypt Road. This is right after the WCC guys had passed. We're on our pit stop, and they checked to make sure Paul was okay because he was holding both bikes.
They were moving, man.
That's what he's talking about. He said they were moving. They had a nice pace line going. So they're probably about 2 or 3 kilometers ahead of us. So I'm telling him that we need to get on the big chain ring because we've been riding the little chain ring most of the ride, going up north into those hills. So on our road here, we decide we're going to do some work. And my hands are colder than I'm used to, so I can't really modulate the shifting very well. So I'm trying my best to kind of softly get on the big chain ring.
Oh, you can't get it in the big chain ring? Is that what you said?
Because I can't really feel the shifters like I normally do, especially since I got the gloves layered. So the showers pass gloves, really their limit is 45 Fahrenheit, which is about 7 Celsius. And we're way below their limit, so they just got slow. So I finally got it on there and got on the big chain ring, and I told them time for us to. I thought I don't have my usual feel that I'm used to. So you have to play with your setup when you get out there. Make sure you get gloves that, depending on the condition, like those showers pads are great when it's raining and not as cold. And if we do encounter cold and rain, then what I would probably do is maybe wear my neoprene gloves. So you got to get different pieces of kit if you're going to participate in outdoor cycling in different kinds of weather. Because rain and cold don't mix if you get wet out there. You don't want to get hypothermia. So we begin to roll on our favorite roll. We start rocking and rolling back. As you can see, it's a whopping 0C. As we get back towards town, it's a little warmer than when we're out there. And now it says -1. So that was about the average between 0 and -2 for the whole ride. So it was the coldest ride we've done. So it didn't dampen our fun factor. It's just that we weren't as comfortable as we would prefer, especially with our hands. So we've got that sorted, and so put that knowledge in the bank and move forward. That's how you learn. You got to get out there and try things, even if it's a short ride. Especially when you're trying new kit in cold weather, start with a shorter ride. And when there's a doubt, go a little warmer than you think you want to, and you can adjust when you get out there. I stay on the edge here because this road is very rough where they scrape that lane for traction. I'm trying to get into some kind of a rhythm. The wind is coming from behind us and to the left. But it's out here. You see my bike rocking, I'm using my hips and just getting into a rhythm and making sure that I'm using all phases of the pedaling circle.
Hey, I'm feeling better.
Good.
Yeah.
What I told Paul was my hands were feeling better as we approached town. Better in terms of where I like for them to be. I don't like my hands to be cold at all. Where some other people don't mind, I like my hands to be balmy in those gloves. I keep my eye on this truck on the right. I watch the driver's door as we go by. I want to make sure we make eye contact and that he sees us. We've got our front light on, so that increases our visibility. But you still cannot be too complacent. With the climb in the distance and my feel not being where I like it to be, I make sure that I start to shift early as we begin the climb in about half a kilometer. Right there, I start to gradually try to get into gear. You hear me tell Paul, it's hard to shift. We're both trying to shift. Normally I'd be done, but it took a little longer.
Yeah, I know.
That's what I thought. I said it's hard to shift. He said, yeah, I know. I mean like a 60-inch gear or something like that. What I told him there was that we'll come up with a solution because we're very close, meaning our hands are not terribly painful right now, but it shouldn't be. It should have been warmer, you know, so we figure out that we need to test the other gloves and make sure we get the right kind on each particular ride based on what the conditions are doing. Because the one we're wearing, the limit was 7C. And we wore it because we were told the forecast would be 6C. And we figured with a liner, it would be okay. Well, the weather tricked us. So that happens. Not much you can do about it. Just adapt and adjust. Once we get over the steepness that we encountered back there, we just stayed in the same gear and just revved up the cadence. Because back there I was doing like 63, 65 RPMs or something like that. And here is 80 something. I think I'm in the same ratio. A 60-inch gear to like a 75-inch gear. I think that's what we're using here. It's still going up but slightly. Just a slight grade. Thank all our sponsors. We also want to thank our patrons and especially our channel members on YouTube. Consider joining our channel. Take advantage of the perks that are available. Our members only weekly premiere is one of them. Look at the links in the video and go ahead and join our channel and enjoy the members only videos that we have available for you. So at this point we finished cresting all the climbs. We got slight grades, and right above that bump ahead, as soon as we go down, we're going to start. It will be a slight descent and then it levels off. And we just try to keep the rhythm the same. So I shift up a cog or two. So don't let the weather stop you from getting out. What you want to focus on is make sure you have what you need for the kind of weather you're going to participate in on your bike. That's what really matters. But you have to get out there and test what you have to see what works for you, because it is a personal selection. As I mentioned earlier, I wear one less layer than Paul, and then I focus on, okay, is this going to be too warm or whatever? As I said, all my layers were more thermal. Paul put on 4 layers. The 4th layer was his jacket. and it worked out. So each time is going to be different based on the humidity, the direction of the wind. It always changes. So nothing's set in stone. This ride, the 3 happened to work. The next time might be different. That's why you got to get out and test it. Walk out in your courtyard or whatever. And after a while, you'll get to know, just coming outside and walking, how you feel based on whatever would work out for the ride. But it's a science. There is no silver bullet. You got to play around with it. So we're back in town. We're on Fish Creek Boulevard here. This part is called actually Honea Egypt Road. There's just this stretch between here and 1488. I look in the mirror, nothing's coming, and I move over. That mirror has become very invaluable. So I hope you all got a chance to get some K's in this weekend. We've had some challenging weather in our area, and hopefully it will settle down, because well into next weekend we're supposed to warm up a little bit. But right now all our roads are kind of closed. It's just not a good idea to go out, even in a car. It's unsafe to drive in our area currently, but hopefully it will clear up soon. So no matter what, keep getting your K's in and keep those doctors fired.
Yeah.